73 for 3 is the Pakistan first innings score. That in reply to England's 267, bowled out in 68 overs. All those 68 overs bowled by spinners, with Sajid Khan, the off-spinner, taking 6 for 128, Naman Ali 3 for 88, and Zaid Mahmood, the wrist spinner, taking 1 for 44. England slipped to 118 for 6. We'll talk about those shots and the way they got out in a moment with Stephen Finn and Co. But when Stokes was out for 12, that was 118 for 6. Then a stand between Smith and Atkinson worth 107, in which they almost entirely put away the sweep shot. Andy will remind me, I think it was one sweep shot played by Smith.
Yes.
We're talking sweep, not slog sweep, we're talking
pure
sweep.
One on the database.
Yeah, and Atkinson none, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so just one sweep shot played by those two in that stand of 107. That, again, I suspect will produce some comments. Smith, 89, hit one in the air in the end to be caught by Rizwan off Zaid. Atkinson, 39. And then the rest of the innings rather subsided. Duckett was mentioned his 52. He got a ball that shot along the ground. Was certainly one of the few players really who could really say were bowled out without contributing to their own downfall. He could do nothing about that. Hit him just above the boot. Abdullah was LBW to Bashir for 14. Saim, first delivery after drinks, chipped a catch up rather casually to Shortwood wicket off Leach for 19, and then Kamran, the new batsman, on 3, went back to a length ball from Atkinson that again kept very low and knocked back his off stump. That was 46 for 3, 73 for 3 at the close, with England therefore have a lead of 194, making tomorrow a really crucial day as far as this game is concerned. 13 wickets falling, Finney. We talked about this pitch, didn't we? I mean, for goodness sake, sort of barbecued by patio heaters, blow-dried by enormous fans, raked by a bed of nails. How's it played?
Well, I actually, after looking at it yesterday and this morning, I did feel as though it was going to play better than it did at the very start of the day. It was the first ball of the day actually turned down the leg side from Sajid, wasn't it, to Zach Crawley. And we sort of looked at each other and thought, oh, okay, maybe this isn't going to be that hard held together wicket for a day or so, and then it's going to deteriorate. It then transpired when Duckett got that one that rolled along the floor. I think that sent the spooks through the England team as well. So, it spun. It's not been a brilliant first day wicket. I'd imagine the match referee and the powers above, depending on what happens in this game, we'll probably look at it, and the artificial interference with what is the playing surface will probably get looked at, but it's been compelling nonetheless.
Well, it has. And how would England assess that innings? I mean, we know they like to be positive all the time. I just make that comment about that the one big partnership was of two batsmen who just basically played straight and played, I mean, by Smith's standards, that's his second slowest half century for England. He just played, he did play some big shots as well. I mean, he hit some sixes and he got out to a skied big hit, but generally in the course of that partnership with 107 they played straight. Now, is that something that others could learn from, do you think?
Well, yeah, you'd imagine that when Ben Duckett was out there, and he's someone who loves to reverse sweep right from the very beginning. He did it really well in the previous Test match where he scored 100. Even he played very few sweep shots. So I think 35 of his 50 or his first 50 runs came in front of square, which is unusual for someone who loves to get low and play those horizontal bat shots. So that message would have been relayed that Ben Duckett was coming down and using his feet and hitting over the top. It's up to each player, though, when you get out there to work out what's your method of scoring, and both Pope and Brook will probably reflect on those two sweep shots that they missed and were LBW and bowled respectively in hindsight, and watching the way that Atkinson and Smith played during that partnership and the way that Duckett played. It would have been their opportunity to build an innings and get used to the pace of the pitch.
It's interesting, is it? Because you can get into your head. I mean, we've all been out there prodding that pitch, looking at it, doing everything, and so have the players. And everyone's been talking about it. rather laughing at the situation with the fans and the heaters and everything else that we've talked about. So it in a way, it's going to be in there, isn't it? That this what on earth is this going to do? Boy, it's going to be a minefield. Somehow you've got to get that out.
Yeah, and funnily enough, last week on the used pitch in Multan, the best way to score runs was sweep. Ben Stokes did it well on that last day. Ben Duckett did it well to score his 100 in the first innings, and people who scored runs on that wicket got low and played with a horizontal bat, and it would have been difficult to park that against the same bowlers on a pitch that you anticipated spinning, to go out there in the first session of a game with probably a game plan that you've talked about, saying, okay, these guys didn't enjoy it when we got down and swept, they didn't enjoy it when we manipulated either sides of the field, and it opened up areas for us to be able to rotate the strike. It would have been hard to get those ideas out of your head on that first morning, and maybe England just took a little bit too long to react to that.
We'll come to the sweepers in a second, but the drivers as well. I mean, Crawley, you have to say that was a pretty loose carving, sort of a drive outside the off stump. Stokes again driving quite wide of the off stump, a ball that was spinning away from him, and therefore that edge. It was a good, nice slip catch incidentally, but it's a shot that could easily get you out. That's the point, isn't it? It's not. It wasn't a half volley. It's not as full as that, and therefore the ball does have time to spin and find the edge. Yeah,
Crawley's one was really interesting actually, because he'd been really cautious, I felt, in his innings. His boundaries came from sweeps predominantly, but when the ball was drifting down the leg side from the left arm spinner. So Shah Massoud moved his short leg over to silly point, and immediately Zach Crawley, it looked as though he didn't trust his defence to not just pop a catch up to that silly point fielder, so the ball was wide outside off stump. And it did spit and bounce a bit. Had he tried to defend it, it might have popped a catch up, so he trusted himself to hit through the line of it, but because of that turn and bounce, just ballooned to catch the backward point. So a bit of credit also to Massoud for putting that man in there and enticing Crawley to play that drive.
Sweepers, Pope, Brook are the two really who fell to that, weren't they? And Pope again, we talk about his starting, don't we? And he made only 3 before falling to that sweep shot, and that's bound to raise more comment, I'd have thought.
Yeah, he's in a really curious place, isn't he, Ollie Pope? Zorts has got the numbers on this, but for someone who scored 3 Test hundreds in a calendar year, he's got the lowest average ever. So it really is feast or famine with Ollie Pope at the moment.
It's actually big innings, but when he does get 100, they tend to be big hundreds too, don't they?
Yeah, he had 196 in the second innings of that Hyderabad first test against India that turned the game. England ultimately won. Had 150 plus against Sri Lanka at the Oval in the final test of the home summer, as well as a century earlier in the summer against West Indies, but averaging 33 this year with those 3 centuries. 429 times a player in men's test cricket has scored 3 test hundreds in a year, and that is the lowest calendar year average of any of those. And since his century against West Indies, I think it was now 11 innings, only 1 score above 30, which was his 154 against Sri Lanka at the Oval, and 6 single-figure scores.
Yeah, I mean, do you think he's in trouble? I mean, selection-wise, we've talked about Jamie Smith moving up the order, for instance, haven't we? I mean, there are other options, aren't there? Yeah,
and the way that Smith played so assured at the beginning of his innings, he did it again, similar to what he did against the West Indies in the English summer, where he scored 50 off around about 100 balls, and then all of a sudden just hit the button. It's his ability to be really calm in those initial moments that suggests to me that he's got a future up the order. How would you get him up the order if Ollie Pope were to be dropped? Which will be a very interesting thing that they'll have to consider for New Zealand. But asking Joe Root to go back up to number 3 might be the solution to that. And then you've got Root 3, Brook 4, Smith 5, Stokes 6. And then if Jordan Cox comes in when Jamie Smith has his baby in New Zealand and does well, then that sort of sorts that bit of the order out as well. It's going to be really, really interesting to what they do, because clearly he's a player that they like, he's a player that they back, but is he batting out of position at number 3? Probably.
Now let's hear from England's Jamie Smith. He's been talking with Simon Mann.
Well, Jamie, a fascinating, fluctuating day's play. How do you see it after the first day?
Yeah, we're pretty pleased with the position we're in. I feel as though no one quite knew or expecting what the wicket was going to do there. I think no one quite had an idea. A lot of people have been saying it never spins in Rawalpindi, so we weren't quite sure. Thankfully won a toss for the first time in a long time. But yeah, we're happy to put runs on the board. We can only see it getting tougher as the game goes on.
What sort of score do you feel was 267?
I think it's a decent score, especially from the position we're in. Any time you're batting first, you have the luxury of the best conditions. There's no doubt about that. So, early wickets tomorrow, and that can look totally different.
What about that morning session? You lost 5 wickets. Did you feel, this is just getting away from us a bit? We weren't quite expecting this in terms of the amount of spin.
Not getting away from you. I think that it's always going to be difficult when you come to alien conditions, and everyone had a game plan and stuck to that quite nicely, and things just didn't come off for people on this occasion. But that's the beauty of the game. You get a second innings, and there'll be guys that be really thirsty for runs.
Were you absolutely desperate to win that toss today?
Yeah, especially the record we've had. I think it's been spoken about a bit tongue-in-cheek with all the lads in the last few days, especially with, I think it was 0 and 7 at a time. And, when you come out here, it showed last week, it's crucial. So to be on the right side of the toss is great.
What about you? You come in at 98 for 5. You've become a bit of a man for a crisis, haven't you, so far in your England career?
I'm not sure about that. It's nice I don't mind them sort of situations. I feel like there's not too much to lose, and it seems that everything to gain, really. You can put your team in a great position with the runs you have. There was a lot of good partnerships. I mean, Gus Atkinson batted superbly as well to take a lot of pressure off, and we were able to actually score quite a lot of runs in that period as well without losing too many wickets, which on a wicket like this where a lot can happen quickly, that was vital.
What did you say to yourself about how you should approach it after seeing what had gone before?
Yeah, I think we adapted a little bit to what guys who had obviously got out, and we could assess from there what was working, what wasn't. It felt a bit more difficult to sweep this time round, which was a lot different to last game. So it's almost just making that switch, and then once you have a game plan, just sticking to it.
You didn't win the 6-hitting competition the other day. That was won by Ray and Ahmed, but you certainly won it today.
Yeah, I think it was more luck than judgment on some of them. On another day, a few of them are out, but that's the way I like to play my cricket. I'm going to be taking it on regardless of the field. If I feel that's the best option, I'll be taking it.
On the pitch, what's the biggest problem? Is it the spin or is it the low balls?
I think the low bounce will make it harder, especially as the game goes on. I can't see it bouncing anymore. It's only going to get lower, so it'd be a tough first hour in the morning where we'll be looking to take as many wickets as possible, and it could get to a point where that first innings is crucial.
Yeah. Just on a couple of other quick things. The last Test match, that catch that went down, Ben Stokes apologising. Did he apologise to you, or was it one just to the team in general?
Well, there's nothing said to me, to be honest. It was, what he said was him, out in the field. That's how he felt. But yeah, everyone's disappointed when chances go down, but no one means to put them down. And it's sport, and you dust yourself off and come again. And yeah, hopefully it'll be a clean performance this week.
And just on New Zealand, can you clarify for everybody what's happening in your position as far as the New Zealand tour?
Well, there's been no firm decisions made right now. We're sort of getting through this game as best we can. We'll focus on trying to win the series, and then we'll see from here.
Okay, well played today, Jamie. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Stay with us. Very shortly we'll continue our analysis of the first day of this final test in Rawalpindi.
You're listening to the TMS podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Spinners, Andy, while you're tinkering with your laptop there still, and I'm talking about the Pakistan spinners, because there's some interesting stats there, weren't there, about the last time, and it is difficult, and you explained why. You're not quite sure what some of these bowlers are bowling, and they're kind of listed as spinners, but then others, Sonny Gavaskar, for instance, might well be listed as a wrist spinner. I don't know, but he'd often bowl little phantom seamers at the start of the innings. It's difficult, isn't it, to work out exactly what. But for spinners to bowl throughout an entire innings, and for two spinners to open the bowling against England is a rare occurrence.
Yes, it's pretty rare in the first innings of a Test match,
yes,
for that to happen anywhere. I think I'm just trying to remember the stats from earlier in the day, but I think it was only the third time since 1907 that two spinners have opened in the first innings of a Test match anywhere. The other two were both involved Bangladesh about 5 or 6 years ago. They bowled unchanged for the first 42 overs, which I made the longest opening spell by two bowlers in the opening innings of a Test since 1965. In terms of spinners bowling every single ball of an innings, it's hard to say from the early years of Test cricket, when many bowlers didn't fall into convenient categories like we have now of pace and spin. So it's a bit hard to say, but it's the first recorded instance of bowlers who are categorised as specialist spinners bowling the of spinners bowling every single ball of the first innings of a Test match. Just quickly on Jamie Smith, you mentioned his half centuries. This is his fifth 50-plus score. 94 balls, the slowest was 98 against West Indies. He's also had 43 balls, 60 ball and 81 ball. And to highlight the gears he went through, so the number of sixes he hit, six sixes, it was almost a 7, one was just short of the line, and 5 fours. And that's only the 7th instance in Test history where we have boundaries recorded, which is most innings ever played. Only the 7th time that a player has scored 80 or more and hit more sixes than fours, and the first time by an England player. So yeah, he's got a remarkable facility. I think he's shown in this career to play situations very well. He can accumulate, he can hit fours, or he can also clear the ropes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Sajid Khan, 9 wickets in the last match, man of the match. He's already he got 6 for 128 from his 30 overs. Bristling, he's there. He's having words with the batsman, isn't he? He's doing his kabaddi celebrations. I mean, just all that sort of character side of it alone has been a very welcome addition to this series, and then of course you take his bowling into account as well. I mean, he's a wily old campaigner. I mean, he's been around a while. He's played a bit of county cricket. He's been there and thereabouts, hasn't he?
And he wants to take his opportunity.
Yeah.
He's brought some passion. He ignited the series actually.
He
from
has.
The very first time he bowled in the second Test match. He brought an energy to Pakistan that they just didn't have before that. I think the really interesting thing about him today was the way that he varied his pace and the way that he used that variation of pace. And I think when we're highlighting the sweeps that Pope and Brooke played there, I think it was also very much how wily he was with the way that he used his pace. So looping the ball slowly outside off stump, around 80 kilometres an hour, so enticing the sweep, getting the batter's eyes out there, and then he'd fire the odd quicker one in. I think about 2 balls and over he was bowling around 90 kilometres an hour. So he's saying to the batter, you can take the risk and premeditate playing a sweep out there, but if you pick the wrong one and I fire one in on the stumps, as he did both times to Pope and Brooke, I'm going to hit you on the pad or hit your stumps. And I think it was that variation of pace in the morning session that confused England about the way to negotiate him especially.
There was that landmark at Multan, wasn't there, where Pakistan spinners took all 20 wickets in the match, and it was the first time it had happened for a long, long time. I just suspect this match we're going to say, God, when was the last time a spinner took all 20 wickets? We're going to say, well, last week actually. Does that excite you, Andy?
Well, yes, but although Zahid Mahmood rather scuppered the same 2 bowlers taking 20 wickets, which I think was, from memory, the 7th time that had happened in the entire history of Test cricket that two bowlers had taken all 20 wickets for their side. Yeah. In a Test, but Zahid Mahmood finally getting on the board in this series.
Yes. Alex, come on, what did you make of the day, really?
Strange old day, wasn't it, really, if we're being honest. We've been looking at the pitch very closely over the last few days and how it's going to behave. And then this morning, everybody was saying that I think it'd be all right. I think it'd play all right. And then that first ball of the day did spin quite sharply down the leg side. Yes, it wasn't the greatest of deliveries, but from ball 1 we did start to see the ball spin, and then it was slow spin, wasn't it? It wasn't like sharp threatening turn that we see in India where you play in Mumbai or Chennai or
and you spinners like bounce, don't you, as well? You'd like the ball to actually bounce up and to hit tops of bat, to hit gloves, and that's what really brings those close fielders into play.
Yeah, and I think that's why England were sticking to the sweep shots, because the ball wasn't bouncing, the top edge wasn't really a threat. You know, there was normally when the ball's bouncing, you want a short fine in place for that top edge. So England went to the sweep shots early because the ball wasn't threatening with that turn and that bounce, like you say. But even still, England didn't play the spin all that well. So it was a strange old day. I think when you look at the dismissals for England in isolation, there was a few poor shots in there, but also you can understand some of the dismissals and how they've happened by being set up by the bowlers. But yeah, I mean, I obviously love any game that brings spinners into the game, especially when they're opening the bowling.
No, well, yeah, most unusual. Shab Bashir, he didn't have a great game in Multan. He bowled 8 overs, no maidens for 29. today. He did pick up a wicket, but he just the length isn't very consistent still, is it? He's still learning, for goodness sake. He's still very, very new to his career, and in terms, particularly of spin bowlers, he's very, very young. But he is going to have to develop more consistency, isn't he?
Yeah, and he will do the more that he plays and the more that he's out there, the more that he's bowling. But he is probably England's most inconsistent spinner. Obviously, he's competing with Jack Leach, who is very, very consistent and takes consistent wickets. But I actually think Bashir's threatening ball is very, very threatening. When he gets it right, you know he's going to pick up wickets. You know he's going to beat a batter.
Tall man. I'd love him to go and talk after John Embry. I was tall spinners of the past, because they do bowl differently to shorter spinners who have to get it up there, but tall bowlers can just bowl with that trajectory of the high arm. What have you got there?
Well, just on the way the spinners did today, Sajid Khan, in terms of angle of deviation off the pitch, Sajid Khan 3.8 degrees, Noman Ali 3.0 degrees, Jack Leach at 4.0 degrees. Sorry, this is only the first 10 overs again. But what was interesting, and Bashir 3.6, so he was getting a reasonable amount of spin, but much, much less drift laterally in the air than the other spinners, which I think might be a factor in his bowling, something he might look to develop.
Yeah, I think so, and I also think that with that consistency, he's got to figure out the angles of the crease and his best action to get the most out of different surfaces. We know on this surface, if you bowl slightly slower, you do get the ball to spin more. But actually, because he is tall, he probably wants to fire it in a little bit quicker. So he's also trying to adapt his game while he's learning. So it's not an easy thing to do. I think credit to him that he just toils away and he's happy. He doesn't mind going for runs, or doesn't show that he minds going for runs, because he knows when he gets it right, he is going to be a threat. Yeah.
Just so like John Embry, Finney, who you know pretty well. I mean, just someone who is tall and is used to. I mean, Alex, you're right.
Embers would love to show him how to bowl. I reckon. He'd put the towel down and say,
he would.
Hit that.
And because tall spinners are different, it's a different business, isn't it? To the short spinner has to get it up.
Yep.
The taller spinner does drive it more into the pitch, as John Embry did. Not a massive turner of the ball, but relentlessly accurate.
And that drift is important, because in England especially, here it draws batters into playing shots. So the best drifter that I played with was Graham Swan, who he bowled round, clearly different trajectory to an Embry or a Bashir, but he's always drifting the ball into the left-hander, forcing them to play, and that's when you can catch the outside edge. It's far harder to play. So, as Alex says, it's working about angles, like how much around yourself you need to bowl to get the revolutions on it, to get that ball to drift. But I do think that's something that you learn with time. He's been thrown in the deep end in Test cricket, hasn't he? He's only just turned 21, and we're watching a guy figure it out on the job, and I think it's impressive that he's managing to compete in international cricket whilst doing so.
Yeah. Atif's here to give a slant from the Pakistan perspective. All that fan blowing and barbecuing of the pitch beforehand. Atif Jagar is the word that I've been learning, although I probably pronounced it wrong. Trying to make it work. I wonder how Pakistan feel tonight about all of that.
Well, I think you got Jagar pretty much bang on, to be fair. You should give yourself some credit. But
the R at the end.
Yeah,
that's the important bit. Yeah.
Kind of feels a bit nautical, doesn't it? But I think Pakistan will be. I think they'll be somewhat relieved. There's an element of watching England go into bat at a stadium where you conceded 500 plus just 2 years ago, regardless of what's happened to the pitch in between and what's happened in the run up to this match. I mean, that's one of the most sort of scarring things that can happen to a team, right? And just to come back from that, to be able to bowl out England for 267, they probably got a few more than Pakistan were hoping. I reckon they probably got about 60 or 70 runs more than Pakistan were hoping on this surface, and that partnership between Smith and Atkinson was really the frustrating part for Pakistan. But even with that, I think all things considered, Pakistan will go into the dressing room, to the close of play, thinking, right, okay, things could have been a lot worse than this, having lost the toss on a pitch where the ball's turning from ball one. They've got to somehow recover in this innings, and they can't fold without building a lead. That's what their focus will be. Build even a modest lead over England, and give themselves a chance to, bowl England out a second time for a chaseable total. Of course, by then, how far the ball is turning is anyone's guess.
Yeah. Looking at Jason Gillespie flogging himself around the outfield. Like, I don't really know what his job title is these days. And how would he describe his own job title?
He calls himself the match day strategist. So it's something that's been picked up on by the media around the world now. Just meet match day. I mean, that wasn't what his contract said when he signed. No. He was the head coach of Pakistan. But it feels like as this series has progressed, his powers have been just sort of, his wings have been clipped considerably. He, just the pre-match press conference yesterday we talked about. He's really he looks quite demoralized, really. Yes, I think it's fair to say his body language is sort of betraying the lack of confidence that's there, and it's without wishing anybody unwell, it feels like the writing sort of on the wall about his future.
Yeah, unless this game goes Pakistan's way, of course, and they beat England in a series.
Well, even if they did do that, it would more vindicate the selectors and the new people that have come in. They would kind of claim this victory rather than the coach and the captain who've sort of worked with the players individually. I think our natural inclination is to obviously sort of side with the people who work with the players and the coach and the staff day in, day out. But the selectors have been very cagey about the way they've portrayed themselves in the Pakistani media. When they're winning, it's up to them. When they're not, it's on the coach and the captain. But I think right now, if Pakistan were to win this Test series, I'm not quite sure what it would signal for the future of Test cricket in Pakistan. Does this mean a firm commitment to slow turning tracks? Are we going to see artificially manufactured tracks that are encouraging spin from the first ball? Is this the direction you want to go in? A country that produced some of the greatest fast bowlers in the history of the game? I don't know, but that's what could happen.
Extraordinary sight in front of us. Simon Mann, who's supposed to be interviewing people, is now rolling the tyres that they put to weigh down the covers. He's rolling them out from a little trolley that's been brought out by a member of the ground staff, and I have to say he's done it appallingly. He's not hit the target at all, and the tyres that he has rolled for the ground staff to lay over the pitch are actually lying redundant over on the grass again. They've gone skimming over. He hasn't got the weight right at all of that.
No, it's far too bobbly. He didn't get low enough to the ground to
Very
give it a good
poor
bowls roll.
Crown Bowls player, I think. Simon, last thought from you, Steve. Tomorrow, decisive day.
Decisive, yeah.
Yeah, set it up.
Yeah, but it feels like it. Yeah, I think both teams will be laying their heads on their pillows this evening, feeling as though they're coming into tomorrow morning with a great opportunity to take a stranglehold of the game. England will clearly hope for an early wicket, and then that pressure will really tell on that Pakistan middle order. But if Pakistan build a partnership for the first half an hour, 40 minutes, then England could get desperate.